Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to visualize something for me. Picture a standard corporate org chart. You know the type. CEO at the top, VPs below, managers. It's boring. It's beige.
Yeah.
It's hanging in a break room somewhere.
Stuff of nightmares for anyone in a cubicle, yeah.
Exactly. Now, take that boring chart, expand it until it covers the entire planet, and then populate the boxes with the British royal family, the Vatican, the Federal Reserve, pop stars, and, weirdly, a disgruntled Bavarian law professor from the 1700s. We're doing a deep dive into the Illuminati flowchart.
Which is, to put it mildly, the mother of all organizational charts.
It is massive. If you believe the document we're looking at today, this is literally a map of how the world is run.
Yeah.
It connects the price of oil to the music on your Spotify playlist.
Right.
But before we go any further, we need to set some serious ground rules, right?
Yeah.
Because when you say Illuminati, people's brains usually go to two places.
Either Hollywood fiction or, total tinfoil hat territory. And that is why our mission today is very, very specific. We are not here to verify if a secret cabal is actually meeting in a volcano lair. We are not investigative journalists.
Well,
we are analysts looking at a specific source text, a composite document that has circulated in conspiracy circles for decades. We're just decoding the mythology, the structure, and the history it claims to present.
we're treating this flowchart like a piece of folklore, really. We just want to understand the internal logic. What does it say is happening? And here's where it gets really interesting for me. Looking at this chart, you'd think it was drawn up by a spy in a basement last week. But the origins of this whole thing are a bizarre mix of actual 18th century history and wait for it, 1970s counterculture satire.
It is a fascinating train wreck of fact and fiction. You have verified historical records sitting right next to sci-fi concepts, all just glued together by deep institutional distrust.
So let's start at the bottom of the pyramid, or I guess chronologically the beginning. Because before the memes and the Jay-Z videos, there was an actual guy. The reality check. If we strip away all the internet lore, we land in Ingolstadt, Bavaria. The year is 1776.
Which is obviously a very busy year for revolutions globally. But in Bavaria, the revolution was a bit quieter. Adam Weishaupt was a canon law professor. And the reality of the original Illuminati is almost disappointingly mundane if you're expecting, cloak and dagger billionaires.
Right.
It wasn't a table of global elites. It was essentially a faculty lounge for frustrated academics.
That is such a funny image to me. Just a bunch of guys complaining about the university administration.
In a way, yes. You have to understand the context. The Catholic Church, specifically the Jesuits, had immense power over the government and the university system in Bavaria at the time. Weishaupt was an Enlightenment radical. Yeah. He didn't want to enslave humanity. He wanted to liberate it. He wanted to replace religious dogma with reason, science, and secularism.
So in modern terms, they were basically the original science bros.
Very much so. But Weishaupt, he loved the drama of it all. He modeled the group on Freemasonry, but he introduced a strict cell structure.
Right.
The idea was that you only knew the people in your immediate circle, not the superiors, and they used secret code names.
I love the code names. The source mentions Weishaupt called himself Spartacus.
And his right-hand man, Baron von Nigg, went by Philo.
Spartacus and Philo. It sounds like a bad buddy cop movie.
It really does.
But despite the cool names and the lofty goals, this wasn't a 1,000-year reign, was it?
Oh, far from it.
Yeah.
They operated for less than a decade. They grew too fast, hit about 2,000 members, and suffered from the classic downfall of any startup founder conflict. Weishaupt and Nigg hated each other. There were internal leaks, and in 1785, the Elector of Bavaria issued an edict banning all secret societies. The Order of the Illuminati was raided, their papers were seized, and the group was, effectively dissolved.
So historically speaking, they were done by 1785. The club closed.
Correct. Done.
So here's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
How do we get from a disbanded group of Bavarian nerds in 1785 to a flowchart that claims to control the modern Federal Reserve?
That is the twist. Shortly after the ban, the French Revolution kicked off. It was bloody, chaotic, and it terrified the monarchs of Europe.
Right.
They couldn't believe that the peasants organized this on their own. They needed a scapegoat. So critics and conspiracy theorists at the time, like a physicist named John Robison, claimed that the Illuminati hadn't dissolved.
Oh, okay.
They claimed the group had simply gone underground to orchestrate the revolution.
So the myth survived, even if the group didn't. It was the perfect boogeyman.
Exactly. And that bridge allows us to fast forward to the present day. Because the modern flowchart we're looking at, well, it's not just frustrated professors anymore.
No. The modern version is massive. It relies heavily on something called the 13 bloodlines theory, which really took off in the 1990s with researchers like Fritz Springmeier.
And this shifts the theory from ideological to biological. The idea here is that power isn't just about what you know or who you know, it's about who you are. It's hereditary.
Let's look at the apex of this pyramid. The chart lists the unknown superiors, and sitting right at the very top is a figure called the Pindar.
This gets very esoteric depending on which version you read, but in the organizational structure, the Pindar is essentially the CEO of Earth.
Wow.
The term is often said to be short for Pinnacle of the Draco, which, drags us into lizard person territory. But for our purposes, think of them as the ultimate chairman of the board.
A terrifying job title. And reporting to this chairman is the Council of 13. These are the families that supposedly set the grand design. And looking at the source, there are 3 names that act as the pillars of this council. The big 3.
The Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, and the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha.
Which we know better as the Windsors, the British royal family.
Right. The source assigns very specific roles to these families. The Rothschilds are viewed as the financial arm, and this connection is built on centuries of lore, specifically the legend of the Battle of Waterloo in 1815.
I know this story. It's almost cinematic. This is the Nathan Rothschild carrier pigeon thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Carrier pigeons or a very fast boat, depending on who tells it. The legend goes that Nathan Rothschild had a superior courier network. He allegedly found out that Napoleon had been defeated at Waterloo a full day before the British government knew.
So he has insider trading info on the fate of the empire. If the British won, British bonds are about to skyrocket.
Exactly. But instead of buying, the legend says he started selling his bonds.
Oh.
The market saw Rothschild selling and panicked, thinking, oh no, England must have lost. Prices crashed to the floor. We bought it all back, pennies on the dollar. By the next morning, when the news of victory arrived, he effectively owned the British economy. Now, historians debate the accuracy of the selling part, but the wealth accumulation was real. And that story is the bedrock of why the Rothschilds sit at the center of this conspiracy chart, the masters of liquidity.
Then you have the Rockefellers, who represent American industry and oil, but in this theory, they are the architects of globalism.
Institutions like the UN.
Institutions like the UN,
Yeah.
and then the Windsors.
Who represent the aristocratic arm. The theory suggests that the Illuminati didn't destroy the old monarchies, they absorbed them. The royals provide the legitimacy, the titles, and the land, while the bankers provide the cash.
It's a merger.
It's a merger of old blood and new money.
The chart lists others, the Astors, the DuPonts, the Kennedys even.
The Kennedys are always the outliers. In the lore, they're viewed as a rebel bloodline, one that didn't always play by the rules, which the theory uses to explain the tragedies and assassinations surrounding them. They're sort of the failed branch of the board.
It's designed to look like a global board of directors. But if these families are the major shareholders, they aren't the ones doing the day-to-day management.
No, they're way too high up.
They aren't filing the paperwork. So we go down a layer to the boardroom, the managers. The chart identifies this group as the Committee of 300.
Allegedly founded in 1727 by the British East India Company, which is a clever connection by the theorist, because the British East India Company really was a corporation that acted like a government.
Right, it had its own army.
Its own army, its own currency, its own laws. The theory posits that the Committee of 300 continues that tradition, an executive board comprising heads of state, intelligence directors, and media tycoons who manage the one world government.
And this brings us to what I think is the most specific kind of aha moment in the source material, the geography of it all. The theory claims the world isn't run by countries, but by 3 specific city-states.
The triad of cities. This is crucial if you want to understand the internal logic of the chart. The claim is that these 3 locations are sovereign entities, they pay no taxes to the countries they are nestled in, and they operate outside normal laws.
Okay, it's wild.
And interestingly, theorists always point out they all have Egyptian obelisks.
Okay, list them, because this is something else. First, the City of London.
And we have to be clear, this is not London, the metropolis. This is the City of London, the square mile financial district.
The part with the dragons on the bollards.
Exactly. It has its own mayor, the Lord Mayor, not the Mayor of London. It has its own police force, and some very unique laws regarding corporations. In this theory, it's the financial hub.
Controlling the world's gold.
Gold and collateral, yeah.
Right. Second, Washington, D.C.
The military hub. The enforcement arm. It's a federal district, distinct from the states. In the theory, its job is to provide the muscle to enforce the will of the financial hub.
And third, Vatican City.
The spiritual and intelligence hub.
Now, that's the one that threw me. We usually think of the Vatican as purely religious, but the flowchart calls it an intelligence hub.
According to the source, yes. It views the Vatican not just as a church, but as the world's oldest and most extensive intelligence network. I mean, think about it. Confessionals in every village, archives going back 1,000 years. The theory even distinguishes between the white pope, the one on the balcony, and the black pope.
That sounds ominous. Who is the black pope?
Yeah, it's a nickname for the superior general of the Jesuits because they wear simple black cassocks. But in the conspiracy lore, the black pope is the real power operating from the shadows, while the white pope is just the PR face.
Of course.
It fits the overall theme. The real power is always one layer deeper than what you can see.
It's a compelling structure. Finance in London, military in D.C., religion in the Vatican. But let's move down the pyramid. We have the owners and the headquarters. How do they actually get governments to do what they want? Because they can't just call the president and say, do this.
Well, the theory says they sort of can, but they use a buffer. This brings us to the strategy layer. These are the groups that bridge the gap between the shadow elite and the visible government. We are talking about the think tanks.
The usual suspects. The Council on Foreign Relations.
The CFR, yes. Conspiracy theorists call it the shadow government of the U.S. because if you look at the last 70 years, a huge percentage of secretaries of state and CIA directors came from the CFR. Then you have the Bilderberg Group.
The annual conference where no press is allowed.
Right. A private meeting of 150 leaders from politics, industry, media. In the real world, it's a high-level networking event. In the flowchart, it's where the marching orders for the next year are handed out.
Raise oil prices, start a war here.
Push this narrative, exactly.
And we can't forget the vetting grounds. The source mentions Skull and Bones.
A classic example, the Senior Society at Yale. Both George W. Bush and John Kerry were members.
Opposing candidates
in the 2004 election. The flowchart views groups like this as recruitment centers, places to spot potential leaders, vet them for loyalty to the order, and bring them into the fold early.
So you get recruited, you get placed in a think tank, you get into government. But you need money to make things happen. And the source is very specific about the operational layer of finance. It's not just banks in general. There's one bank that sits above them all.
The Bank for International Settlements, or the BIS.
The central bank of central banks.
Located in Basel, Switzerland, it is an incredibly opaque institution. And here's a detail that always gets people. The BIS has legal immunity. Swiss authorities literally cannot enter the premises without permission.
Wait, really? So it's like a diplomatic embassy?
Yes. In the flowchart, the BIS is the control valve. It sits above the Federal Reserve, above the ECB. It coordinates the global flow of money.
The theory argues that if you control the currency, you don't need to control the laws.
Give me control of a nation's money and I care not who makes its laws.
Attributed to Mayer Amschel Rothschild, it's the heartbeat of the theory. But money is only half the equation. The other half is what the source calls social engineering. And this part brings up a name I hadn't heard much about until digging into this. The Tavistock Institute.
The Tavistock Institute of Human Relations. In reality, it's a British nonprofit that studies psychology and organizational behavior. But in the flowchart, it is the brainwashing center of the world.
The source links them to everything. The Beatles, the counterculture movement, modern pop music.
The argument is that Tavistock designs pop culture to create controlled chaos. The theory is that they manufactured the sex, drugs, and rock and roll culture of the 60s to degrade traditional values and make the population more docile and distracted.
Manufactured consent.
Exactly. You keep the public in a state of anxiety or distraction so that they will accept solutions they wouldn't otherwise agree to. You create a problem, wait for the reaction, and then offer the solution that you wanted to implement all along.
It strips away agency from the public. It suggests that our culture, our trends, our news, it's all just a script written by a psychologist in a basement in London.
It suggests we are just pawns on a board we can't even see.
So we've climbed down the pyramid. We went from the Pindar and the 13 families through the Committee of 300 and the city-states, down through the think tanks and the central banks, all the way to the media we consume. It's a totally comprehensive theory of everything.
It ties up every loose end in history into a neat bow.
But, and this is the biggest but of the entire deep dive, we have to go back to what we teased at the beginning, the origin of this specific modern chart. Because the source drops a bomb here. It says a lot of this specific logic, It didn't come from a leak. It came from a joke.
This is the Discordian connection. And honestly, it recontextualizes everything. To understand the chart, you have to understand the Principia Discordia and, more importantly, the Illuminatus trilogy.
These were books written in the late 60s and 70s.
Yes, specifically the Illuminatus trilogy by Robert Shea and Robert Anton Wilson. These guys were editors at Playboy magazine.
Playboy.
Yes. They got all these letters from conspiracy theorists, people ranting about the Freemasons, the Jews, the commies, the UFOs. And instead of ignoring them, they decided to have fun with them.
They launched Operation Mindfuck.
A fantastic name. Their goal was to sow chaos. They wrote these books which mixed every single conspiracy theory they could find. Atlantis, the Illuminati, rock and roll, the CIA, talking dolphins into the surreal, hallucinogenic story. But here's the key. It was satire. It was designed to mock the paranoid culture of the Cold War.
They were trying to show that you can link anything if you just look hard enough.
Exactly. They wanted to screw with reality to force people to think for themselves. But then, well, the internet happened.
And context died.
Completely. People found these charts, these lists, and these connections in the books or on early forums, and they didn't know the source material. They stripped away the irony. They took the satire and treated it as a literal map.
So the standard model of the Illuminati that we see on TikTok and YouTube today, parts of it are literally jokes that people didn't get.
Or rather, jokes that became myths. It's a phenomenon called Poe's Law. Eventually, a parody of extremism becomes indistinguishable from the real thing.
That is mind-blowing. We're analyzing a document that is essentially fan fiction of a prank that got out of hand.
But it shows the power of a good story. The structure of the Illuminati flowchart is compelling because it is simple. It explains why bad things happen. It explains why the world feels chaotic. It says it's not random, it's them.
It's almost comforting in a twisted way.
That is the psychological hook. If there is a Pindar and a Council of 13, then at least someone is driving the bus.
Even if they're driving it off a cliff.
Right. The alternative, that the world is chaotic, random, and that no one is really in charge, is actually much scarier for a lot of people.
Yeah.
The idea that 8 billion people are just colliding into each other with no plan, that keeps people up at night.
That is a fascinating way to look at it. We've gone from Adam Weishaupt's secret faculty meetings in 1776 to a sci-fi satire in the 1970s, all mashed together into this digital folklore we have today.
It is a perfect example of how history, fiction, and fear can blend together to create a new reality.
So what's the final takeaway? We've deconstructed the pyramid, we've looked at the bloodlines, the banks, and the bishops. Did we just throw the chart away?
No, I think the takeaway is to recognize the chart for what it acts as. It's not a map of the world, it's a map of our institutions and our distrust of them. It highlights where power actually lies, in banks, governments, media, but it connects them with a red string that might not actually be there.
It's a modern mythology.
Yeah.
Just instead of Zeus and Apollo, we have Rockefellers and Rothschilds.
Precisely. It's a story we tell ourselves to make sense of the noise.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm never going to look at a dollar bill or a flowchart the same way again. It's been a wild ride through the architecture of conspiracy.
That always is.
That wraps up our deep dive into the Illuminati flowchart. We hope you enjoyed this journey from the beer halls of Bavaria to the boardroom of the New World Order.
And remember, just because you see a pattern doesn't mean it was designed that way.
Or was it?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Leaving you with one final thought to mull over today.
Yeah.
Does this flowchart exist because a secret group is actually controlling the world? Or does it exist because, in a world that feels increasingly out of control, we find a strange comfort in thinking that someone is at the wheel, even if they are the bad guys?
That is the ultimate question.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.